Hello, welcome back to Tumbling After. Sorry about that fast cutoff from part 1 of episode 3, but welcome back to part 2 of One Box, No Church. I'll be wandering again, no hat today. Hopefully not a lot of huffing and puffing because I'm at the top of the hill. I'm just gonna wander. But it's gorgeous today in the Pine Brook neighborhood of Park City. As you can see, I have no complaints. My life is beautiful. Okay, so where were we? I'm telling you about a time that I overcame another pretty serious loss and heartbreak in my life. So I told you that we got to this point on the steps, and we considered that maybe we weren't going to keep the church in our life forever. So we decided not to talk to each other about it, that instead we would talk to friends, people on our own, pray about it, make decisions for ourselves, and not pressure each other, which is really wise. And we did that. I remember getting in one argument a few weeks later where he said, yeah, I talked to B and yeah, he pulled out all this history stuff and yeah, church is corrupt. And I was like, whoa, hard pass. Like, that is not why I'm leaving the church. That stuff is garbage. And I didn't want to hear it. Like, I was going from the heart and with our kids. And then Tim was also researching other things about the church. But it wasn't a great match to fight those things together. So about 3 months later, it was the church's general conference, first week of October. Usually we would sit home and watch all weekend. And for some reason that weekend, I asked him if he wanted to go on a long drive to a town not too far off that we hadn't been to yet. I guess this was the moment he was like, what? She's going to let us go on a drive instead of listen to conference. He didn't tell me that till later. So go on this drive. And we have a pretty serious talk about the church. And we kind of put all our evidence on the table. This is what I came up with. This is what I was thinking. What did you think of? And we talked about the ordained women movement that was happening in the church right then, led by Kate Kelly, who continues to be a hero of mine. And I had a different perspective. I wasn't even on board with ordained women all the way yet. And he was. He was listening to people in his Facebook feed, which had a lot more artists. My Facebook feed at the time had a lot more Mormons, essentially. But we chatted through it, and when it came down to it, we both agreed that the church was not a safe place for the children, and we should leave. And we're having like this super practical conversation, which was crazy. And I said, okay, so we're doing this. And he said, yeah. And I said, okay, well, what's your timeline? I remember we were driving on this windy road trying to get to that town where my daughter left her brand new Costco coat. I was really mad about that. But okay, I digress. What's your timeline? And he says, like 10 years. Wait, what? Wait, what? Yeah, like we could leave the church in 10 years. Wait, babe, what the hell are you talking about? Well, we're not going to leave. He says, we're not going to leave with my dad still alive. What? What are you talking about? What does that have to do with anything? The kids are going to be in college by the time 10 years. What do you mean? Yeah, well, I just figured, and I just said, oh, okay. Back up. I hear you. You're not ready. You don't want to leave. Totally fine. Oh, so church next Sunday? Okay. And that was the end of the conversation. I remember that night. I was singing hymns in one of our tiny little Victorian living rooms, and it's my voice is near my God to thee all over the house, and that was it. A couple weeks later, it was really weighing on me though, I think. A couple weeks later, we get invited to a baptism, and Mormons baptize their kids at 8, and here I'm worried about the messaging of the church to that age group, so I'm especially nervous. And I'm driving up to Montrose and probably texting and driving, and I don't do that. And I Facebook the phrase, I'm driving up to Montrose for a baptism, and I can't even think and don't even want to think of a way to explain this craziness to my children. So I'm getting kind of ballsy at that point, but it's still a pretty short period of time. Well, while we're at the baptism, Mormons use a lot of phrases which are very comforting to them, but at the time wasn't comforting to me. If you make the right choice, or, we want to honor this little person who got baptized today. They made a choice to get baptized. And I didn't feel at the time the church was really giving children a choice, that they were more Well, here's how I'll say it. And this isn't super respectful, but it is really how I internalized it. Oh, in the church, you have a choice. If you choose the right, then we'll love you. And that kind of conditional love was what was really worrying me. So we go to this baptism and the missionaries are there. And since we were the only Mormons in Ouray, we fed the missionaries quite a bit. So the missionaries come up and say, hey, we're supposed to eat at your house on Monday. Can we come tonight instead? And I say, sure, go ahead. So I go home, tell Tim the missionaries are coming. We run to the little neighborhood store, grab some things to make lentils or something. And next thing I know, we're sitting at the table with these two missionaries. And the missionary age had just changed. These boys are young. They're like 18, 19 years old. And there was something about them. And the language they used sounded... They were talking to us like we were in the in crowd, right? But as they talked about the people they were teaching about the gospel, they were so proud of the manipulative language they were using. And I'm not saying that's all missionaries, but these two boys were very proud of it. And then they proceeded to kind of use that manipulation on us. And there was not an energy that either of us wanted in our home. And we just weren't, our hearts were not in it, and we felt gross. And it's funny in marriage because there are so many times you're not on the same page. And one thing that's been always beautiful in my marriage is that when we're on the same page, whether it's stupid, like about the Christmas tree or about Jesus, like we are really on the same page. And this is one of those powerful moments that it was both really clear and also really heartbreaking. But we walked the missionaries out the door, and I remember putting two hands on the door and it closing. And then I remember falling to the ground. And Tim said, that's the end, huh? And I said, yeah, that's it. And there was never a discussion again. That was 8 years ago. We have never doubted that decision, and we never went back. Mormons don't do that. They usually leave a little bit more slowly, move away. Don't tell the church where you went. Stop telling people you're Mormon. Stop going start only going every other week. We left like thieves in the fucking night. Like we did go back 2 weeks later, kind of on accident. And I essentially walked in to the bishop's office, who's like the congregational leader. And I basically, I had an hour-long conversation and explained to him. But even before that, I started crying. So